Okay, maybe we can go ahead and start because I understand that 5 o'clock we have to stop and there's a reception. And I'm Fouad, Professor and Chair of the Department of Civil Engineering at University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I'll be moderating this session. And that dropped from the program. Also, we have with us a very prestigious panel from DOT, research engineers and bureau chiefs of the research and development. We have with us William Barstis from Mississippi Department of Transportation. We have Jeffrey Brown from Alabama Department of Transportation, Darryll Dockstader, the Florida Department of Transportation, Georgene, Geary, Georgia Department of Transportation, and John Kirby doesn't show on your program. Again, he was dropped like me, and John is the research engineer, North Carolina Department of Transportation. I'd like to say just, I don't want to take much time because this is a very valuable and important session and will be a very important information going around. But I'd like to take just a couple of minutes, go over just a brief bio of each person. I'll start with Bill Barstis. Bill received his BS and MS in civil engineering from Mississippi State University. He's been with Mississippi Department of Transportation for 25 years. He currently serves as a pavement research engineer and assists with Mississippi Department of Transportation Research Division program. He has a lot of activities in the department, from revise a complete revision of the research proposal development and submission process for the Mississippi Department of Transportation. He's also project manager for MDOT, implementation of the new mechanistic empirical pavement design procedure using AASHTO-aware pavement in design. And he currently serves as vice chair of AASHTO-aware pavement ME product task force and has been involved with several TRB committees and NCHRP panels. Next is Mr. Brown, Jeffrey Brown. He's the Bureau Chief, Research and Development at Alabama Department of Transportation. And he's been employed with LDOT since 1995 and serves as Bureau Chief of Research and Development. And during tenure at LDOT served in the following positions: Assistant Environmental Coordinator, Assistant State Testing Engineer, and Assistant Materials Testing Engineer. Prior to working for LDOT, Mr. Brown was president of an asphalt company and worked for the federal government in operations and maintenance. He's married to wife Ella for 20 years and they reside in farm outside Montgomery, Alabama. Next is Darryll Dockstader, Manager Research Center, Florida Department of Transportation. Darryll has worked in the Florida Department of Transportation Research since March 2000, serves as program manager since 2009. He oversees FDOT's research program, working closely with functional areas within Florida DOT, HWA, your states, and other state and national research organizations to develop and deliver a robust research program that advances transportation practice. Darryll serves on the TRB Conduct of Research Committee, NCHRP 20-68 Domestic Scan Panel, and NCHRP 20-63 Performance Measurement Toolbox and Reporting System for Research Programs and Projects Panel, as well as the AASHTO Research Advisory Committee, Value Research Task Force. Darryll is a graduate of Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida, and holds an MA and PhD degrees from Florida State University. Glad to be with us. Then we have Georgene Geary, next to me here, State Research Engineer, Georgia Department of Transportation. Georgene is a registered PE in Georgia and has a BSc from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a master's from Georgia Tech. She's currently the State Research Engineer for Georgia DOT. In addition to being responsible for a $6 million per year transportation research program for Georgia DOT, she's also over the Georgia DOT MEPDG implementation team, which will bring Georgia into the mechanistic pavement design area. She's also in charge of coordinating SHRP-2 implementation for Georgia DOT. Georgene is a member of the AASHTO Research Advisory Committee and the AASHTO Joint Technical Committee on Pavements and the Vice Chair for the AASHTO Subcommittee on Materials. Finally, we have John Kirby with us. John Kirby is Research Engineer, NC Department of Transportation. He has 15 years of experience with North Carolina Department of Transportation, the past 3 years with NC DOT Office of Research, and prior to the 12 years in the operations since side of NCDOT. Mr. Kirby has a bachelor's degree from NC State in Raleigh, and master's degree from Duke University in Durham. As you can see, we have a very, very prestigious panel. And, we're very proud of the panel, and in the next 55 minutes or so, we're going to have questions and answers with the panel and see the reviews. This is a very important session, I think. Being a university person, I think this is one of the most important sessions. I'd rather be sitting and listening. I'll try to listen very well. But we have, basically, we have four very important questions. And so really, and we have about an hour, so each question is about 15 minutes, you know, plus or minus 15 minutes or so. And I'll start with question one, and then maybe we can start, you know, with maybe Georgene, and then Mr. Brown, and so this way with answers. And the first question is, very important question, is what are the obstacles in implementing and deploying university research? As you know, there's a lot of very good university research. I'm talking only about very good university research. But there are sometimes obstacles in deploying and implementing that research. So what are those obstacles, and how have you, the DOT, worked to overcome these challenges or obstacles? So that's the first question, and I'll start with Georgene.
Thank you. The biggest obstacles is probably some of the biggest obstacles we all face too, and that's time. I think if you were here this morning, you heard the commissioner say that you know, the DOT used to be at 7,000, and not too long ago we were at 5,000, and we're approaching quickly at 4,000 employees. And so that means those, and we got more lane miles, and more issues, and you know, more things to deal with, and the public is more involved, and so that takes time too. So the people that are actually doing the work, trying to get them to see that it's important to spend the time to look into the future. Look at that, you know, spend some of your time looking at that 20% in the future. And that and buy-in, trying to get, you know, that buy-in. We really haven't been able to do much about time. But in our research, we've been trying to improve the buy-in. And one of the things that we did for buy-in is when we create a research project, we identify what we call a technical implementation manager. And that person is from the office that's going to implement that research project. And so they stay with that project from the beginning. Their name is on that project. And they're involved in the project the whole time period. So that helps with the buy-in. We also, just recently, a couple months ago, we created an implementation manager position. I actually had to go to the commissioner to get that approved. And the person that was selected was in my office, and I still haven't been able to replace their position, but it's still on my org chart, so hopefully that will happen. So he's actually doing two jobs now, but Ben Bui, some of you may know him that are from the Georgia Tech area, he is our new implementation manager. And so we're putting a focus on implementation by having him, you know, not do the normal research projects, but to look and focus at implementation projects, and to look and focus at the SHARP 2 implementation. I think Fiad mentioned that I'm the SHARP 2 coordinator. Well, I'm kind of turning that over to Ben, because the Strategic Highway Research Program right now is totally about implementation. And so we should be able to learn some implementation tricks from that. There's also something called the Federal Highway Everyday Counts. And so, you know, we're going to kind of focus all that in the implementation manager, and they'll help the research people improve the implementation.
Excellent.
Good afternoon. I think it's inherently human nature. We have a tendency to be fearful of change. And, you know, you've got people in your department who've been doing things a certain way for years. It works, but there are other ways that, you know, you can do things more efficient. The other thing I would like to speak on is when you do implementation, sometimes you have to change specifications. And that in itself is a pretty in-depth process sometimes when you change your specifications. And in changing your specifications, if you send them out to industry for comment, it may favor one industry over another, asphalt over concrete. So you go back and forth in that battle, and you finally work your way through the weeds on that. But it takes some time sometimes, and you have to, if you're in a pretty political environment, and we are, industry plays a pretty political role in a lot of things. The concrete pipe versus plastic pipe, we all gone through that battle. We in Alabama have and still is. Other thing is your research may be dependent on a construction project. And if that construction project get delayed, then implementing your research may be delayed also. And then there's training your personnel. If they're not trained on the new implementation, that takes some time too. If you've got to go out to your divisions and your districts and train them on the new procedure, that takes time. And sometimes your first project that you implement, it may be costly. And if it's costly, then upper level management, they're looking at you. They may say, well, you know, if this is going to cost us this much money, then it may be something that we want to put on the shelf. So you have to look at that too. As far as things to get around that, I would say what we do, we have a project advisory committee, which is mostly your bridge engineering, construction, those types. Put those folks on your pack, and if possible, put some folks from industry on your pack too, where all your stakeholders are part of the project, and at the end of it, they feel like they have ownership. They'll be champions for you. The next thing I would say is from beginning to end, that's pretty much all how we operate.
Excellent. Dan?
Well, without repeating too much what you've already heard, time resources, staff resources is certainly one an issue. And what we've done, we also have a performance coordinator position, so it's tasked with making sure that we're following up on a regular basis. What we try and do, one of the things we're trying to do is link our solicitation cycle, the requests of new research, with an implementation status of projects that closed out in the cycle prior. So we're psychologically, I want to make sure that they understood the link. You're asking for new stuff, but you know what you've already just completed. So that's one of the things. One of the other things that I'm trying to do is give the opportunity to put resources towards demonstration or pilot projects for projects that would benefit, where there would be an acceleration of adoption, to have projects that are specifically geared towards implementation. And one of the things that I found very illuminating, I thought I was doing pretty well and ahead of the curve, and then I heard about a year and a half ago that Virginia DOT has actually really ramped that up, and they've got a very robust implementation program where they're dedicating about $10 million a year. So I want to go and find out what's in their soup and start feeding on it. So those, I would say, are some of the challenges, some of the ways that we're trying to address them. I just add one thing. We held our peer exchange a little over a year ago, and one of the topics, one of the action items that came out of it was how can we better partner with our researchers to help get the stuff implemented. And so what we're looking at now is, are there ways to build in to make sure that we've had deployment plans for a long time, where you look in advance of doing the research. What do you need to do to deploy it? What do you need to do to implement it? We're looking even harder now, where can we plug in some of those activities into the research project itself? And then, again, feeding towards that idea of demonstration projects, is how do we continue to leverage the partnership with the researchers to accelerate adoption and implementation? And I'll stop there.
One of the issues that we've run into is you have to have buy-in from the other departments or divisions within your agency. We had come up with one of the researchers from a local university came up with a great idea. We worked with them to characterize subgrade soils for inputs for the new design guide using lightweight remote. you may have heard of that, Georgene, little device, and the rest of you. Great idea. We developed a proposal with the researcher, and going through our process, we ran into a roadblock, and that was the districts, they don't have the personnel to implement that technology. They just don't have the people. Fortunately, we did not spend the money to conduct the research. We caught that in our process. We developed the proposal, worked with the researcher to develop this idea, but prior to going forward with it, again, found out that our districts were not going to have the resources to implement. So that's a real, you can have a super idea, but you've got to make sure that the person within your agency that's going to be using that idea, they have the resources. Another thing that we've run into is with a project that would require development of software. Our IT people, you know, they like to have a lot of control of that process. And sometimes, you know, trying to marry up research with the software development, those two things can get a little bit sticky. We had another example there was we were trying to do some traffic characterization. Design guide and pulled in some overloading considerations, and the PI had worked and just did a fabulous job with the proposal. And then once again, when we started to run it up the line, it's, oh, we see software development in here, and so, oh, we can't do it, you know. So those are just some issues that we run into. To try to overcome some of this, though, the process that we have in MDOT is that we ask the PIs to find a champion that we use the results of their, you know, you have a PI, a professor from a university, they want to do work for MDOT. We require them to find a champion within the department before we will even consider funding their study. And in that process of acceptance, we actually have the study champion sign a sheet of paper saying that they will be a champion. We also solicit that person's division head support, because you can get some really gung-ho people that are excited about seeing something done for change, but if they don't have their upper management in that division supporting that effort, you know, right. So that's what we do. That's what we try to do to try to avoid some of the implementation bottlenecks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to brag a little bit about NCDOT's research, because that's what they like to do. We have results-oriented research. 90% of our research ideas come from within NCDOT. So a lot of our products hit the ground before they're ever complete, before the research projects are complete. We have 4 subcommittees that look at each of our research ideas. We have a pavement and maintenance committee. We have a planning and environmental committee. We have a structures committee and a traffic and safety committee. And these committees fight for their research ideas to get the proposal through, to get the full proposal through. And we can sit in those committees, and those guys really haggle that out. And they want the funds to fund their research. So we really don't have a problem with that. Some of the obstacles that are tough to overcome are reiterating what these guys said. Sometimes the final product is not suitable for the production environment, such as software and models, best practices. Those are problems. And there's a lack of interest in change as well. People say that, you know, been doing this for 20 years, this is working, what's the problem? And how do we overcome those obstacles? I have 3 ways: communication, communication, and communication. It's establishing a partnership between NCDOT and that researcher to have them collaborate together the entire period of that research project. And once it's over, have that researcher work with that NCDOT person to implement that product. So that's our process. So it's continuous feedback.
Excellent. Well, seems like there's a lot of, if you add all this up, I think it's a terrific way for implementing projects. And, okay, we have a question from the floor.
Do you want questions on these responses, or you want to wait?
I think it might be timely to do it with each question, so we don't lose the train of thought.
Okay. I have one. Just you have the requirement. You've got to find a champion. The other side of that, of course, is you may have some folks at the DOT are getting more calls than they want from faculty looking for champions. Do you how to moderate from the other side of that? I mean, how does a faculty member find their champion without pestering? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And what happens typically is they submit their, like, you know, they can come to the research division, and we can try to help them find, if they have an idea that they want to work and develop, then we can try to help them within the agency to find someone. We have workshops. We have conducted a couple of workshops. The last one was in 2012. We invited academia and industry, and we did some brainstorming sessions for topics of study that we have on our website. So that way you can start putting the two together, the potential researcher with the topic and with the person within MDOT. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, I know I've been asked the question by other faculty, you know, folks who've been here a while, they've kind of figured out who the right people are and do their kind of stuff. But it's when the new faculty come in, they just don't know who to talk to. And I say, well, you know, what's your right meeting that you need to go to? And they're just trying to find that. It's challenging. And start making cold calls, and then you get called, why is this guy calling me, right? And you just,
I'd like to give you our 2 cents worth of that. What we do, every 2 years we do what's called a round robin tour. We go to each one of our research partners and we spend a day with them. And what we do, we make ourselves available because we know faculty have classes, so we stay there a whole day. So when the class is out, you come back, we do a one-on-one. And what we've done in the past, we take upper level staff with our chief engineer, our deputy directors with us. We're not successful at that all the time. And we give them our little kind of dog and pony show about our umbrella agreements and contractual documents, the invoicing and all of that. But in the interim years that we don't, if a new professor comes to that institution, then we invite them down to my office, Michelle, my assistant, and myself. We give them the little dog and pony show. We find out what their expertise are. If the structures, then we'll set up a meeting with our bridge engineer, take them over there, introduce them, set up a one-on-one, let them know if they come up with ideas, they can call that person, talk to them, and pass it down before they do a full-blown proposal and they send it to us and not something.
Darryll, you talked about creating a link between implementation and the solicitation of new project ideas. I think you alluded to that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? How have you established that link?
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one. What happens is in October, we'll send out our, like North Carolina, you know, our office doesn't accept unsolicited proposals. We do like you do, which is if someone sends in a request, I'll facilitate a conversation or a visit or whatever. So in October, we'll send out our call for research to the folks within, the coordinators within the department, who will, within the respective functional areas, will help facilitate, you know, the development of prime statements and prioritization and send that in. We don't look at those unless they send us. They're not supposed to look at those unless they also send us the status of the projects that concluded. What is the implementation status of the year prior? That's how we link it. Is to really, you know, say that it's that time. So it's just that simple.
Thanks. We're a little bit behind on time, so I appreciate you moving a little bit faster. Next question, because I'd like to cover all the questions that are so important. Next question is about, there's an excellent relationship between the DOTs and universities in the United States. The DOTs depend on the research universities in their state for research and development and innovation. And on the other hand, the universities are really dependent so much on their faculty careers and student employment and development of the research products all through the DOT. That has been an excellent, you know, one-to-one relationship and very, very beneficial. However, of course, you know, in any of those, I mean, there's always certain things that can be improved or be done better, you know. So we'd like to hear from the panel about, you know, how universities can do better than what they're doing now, and what needs to be improved? Georgene? Yeah, that's okay. So.
All right. Universities are very responsive when we, send out requests for our needs. Sometimes we get too many responses. That may be going to the area of improvement also. And, providing ideas to us that sometimes we don't think of. I think that, you guys do that very well, kind of keeping abreast of the things that are going on and providing us some ideas that maybe we haven't thought of. On, the improvement, maybe of some coordination. And I'm looking at, just the idea of Georgia. Georgia, for a long time, had like one engineering university, and that was it. And so it was really easy for us to coordinate. Now we have 5, 6, 7 different universities that are doing engineering. And so, I wish they would work together a little bit better. But I don't know how we can, we need to help facilitate that too.
Jeff can add to this.
Yeah.
You guys are working together.
Oh, that, and I've got to say, we need to do better on your typos, on your grammar, on your final research projects. My boss is just eating me up about it, so I had to say that.
Jeff?
Georgene covered a lot of the areas that I see some of the areas that I mentioned, but one thing I would like to commend the institutions on is their understanding the functionality of the DOTs, how we operate, what we do from day to day. And if you don't understand that, then you can help us, but not at your full potential. I think the institutions that we deal with, they understand what we do. And as far as improvements, I would only just say one, and that is if you have a PI and your PI decides to go to another institution, then he changes and leaves, then I would say that's one of the issues that we've had a little bit of a problem with. The project get delayed, and then you request extensions, and if we're on a short timeline, it can cause us some problems.
Yeah.
We look at our university partners, which is fantastic collaborators. We've got really good collaboration. And so they have the expertise to bring to problems that we either just don't have or don't have the resources to supply. So it's been a very fruitful relationship. I enjoy that, yes, reports, please. And because I've gone actually to the schools and said, you realize this is marketing material for you. It goes out everywhere. It's out there in TRID, the TRB online database. And you never know when someone's going to look at your old work to determine whether or not they want you on some new work. We also had recently a couple of projects that died because of there was a migration. So before there was some kind of strange migration where we had some researchers go from one institution up north. Once it was to the middle of the state, and we managed that well, and once it was out of the state, up into Georgia. So I don't know if it's going to continue, but two of those projects just died because they couldn't backfill them. So it was really just a very disappointing on those. And then the area that we can do better on, I think, is one that we can explore. It's one that's ripe for exploration, which I'm going to come back to my last response, is how can we figure out how to make sure that we both have success stories to tell by doing the best job we can of getting product ready for implementation.
Well, the university, we don't have very many folks employed with MDOT that have PhDs, advanced degrees, and so our universities do provide us technical and academic. They fill a good gap there. Clarification, I know with the new design guide, my background's materials and pavement design, so I keep pulling from that as far as experience base, but when this new design guide requires characterization of materials, I was reading one of the manuals and I saw the term Laplace transform. I thought, my goodness, I haven't seen that term since I was in differential equations eons ago, and I barely remember, But the point is they bring, and so Tom White, Dr. White at MSU was able to kind of coach me along there and give me some of the academic background for it. So, you know, from that perspective, the universities are very helpful. Another thing the universities are helpful on is that within the research division is the division has hired several students that were working on like their master's degree. And so they would work for maybe Shane Buchanan, he's long gone, but Tom White and Isaac Howard and some of the other professors there at MSU, and we've had the good fortune to employ some of these folks, and they're doing great. So some of the graduate students have, I would say on the source for improvement, it is when a PI or a consultant professor, you need to get buy-in from us before you go down the road to developing a full-blown proposal. I mean, if you have a great idea, again, you need to develop a research or contact, make a relationship with someone at the DOT that can serve as a research study champion. And what you need to do is work with that champion from the get-go. In other words, don't just lay out a full-blown plan, but usually when you get people's buy-in on things, we require when we enter into contract with somebody, we want a research plan that is placed in terms of study tasks. And so, really and truly, it's at the beginning that you want to work with that research study champion in developing those tasks. You get the buy-in from them at the beginning, and you're also more likely that they'll see you through all the way to the end. Okay, so I would say that that would be the biggest thing is to work with that champion and develop your scope of work for that study.
As far as North Carolina is concerned, universities do very well with local issues. There's some areas North Carolina is growing tremendously. There's some areas that they do lack expertise. And we've had to go out of state, gone to Virginia Tech, Indiana State, maths and all kinds of stuff. As far as how they need to improve, again, go back to collaboration with the generator of the idea. Dr. Hunter asked, how can I get a new faculty member? Punch in there. If you don't have success the first time, try somebody else. Just keep pounding the table. You're used to that kind of stuff, I'm sure. We do have difficulty engaging HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, and also MIHLs, or minority institutions of higher learning. We are trying to push that a little bit with NCDOT. And then we have problems with PIs that will submit proposals that are out of their area of expertise. They'll just submit proposals for every single idea that comes out there. You know that person is not an expert in that field, and that just gives them a reputation of, hey, this guy's just trying to get grant money. And so that'll push him back a little bit, and he won't get funding at all. So those would be my comments.
Excellent feedback on how universities can improve the research programs. Question?
The other side of the HBCU team up with the schools for the DOT, what we feel on the cost of share, which being a small school to the HBCU and MSI, come up with a 50% cost share is kind of a challenge in a way that with a full load teaching and there's very little release time available, like we cannot release time, indirect cost. So that's a big challenge being the HBCU to team part of this kind of solicitation.
Did you guys hear what he said?
Not sure.
Go ahead.
Right.
He was talking about HBCUs and minority institutions, their lack of time. They're teaching classes, they're trying to get publish.
Not only that, the cost share, which we have to come up on board for
Right.
teaming up, so that's a big challenge
And-
which I'm facing right now with the UTC Tier 1 proposal, which we have to come up with a 50% cost mass.
Right.
It's very hard.
And you also said cost matching is very difficult for those smaller institutions.
Many DOTs will not request cost share.
We
Most
have
DOTs.
We team up with the UTC Tier 1.
I said, yeah, that's
We
federal.
are supposed to come up with 50%.
So that's a good point.
I talked
Cost
to
share is sometimes difficult.
I'd like to make a couple comments, like with the UTC program at the federal level. And so I understand your point in terms of cost share. And I think in addition to this, even cost share doesn't have to be in dollars, it can be in kind. So if maybe that could be the route, they're supposed to find more to engage those students. And the other thing at the federal level I'd like to see is more substantial engagement. And not where the solicitation recommends having the HBCU and MSI as part of the consortium, do it in name only. We really do look for some substantial engagement. So again, if the cost share dollars are an issue, then the in-kind support should be available. Or that's something else to consider.
You kind works very well, even on the federal level. Okay.
Do any of your DOTs have sabbatical programs where you have a faculty come and stay with you for a semester or an academic year and work with you? And if yes, how does that work? If not, is that a good idea, do you think?
We have a professional civil engineer trainee program where that individual actually come on board after, I think it's about 30 to 40 hours of coursework at the institution. They can elect to work during the summer, or they can elect to work a semester, come and work a semester with us, and then go back to the institution. And actually, that's where we get our pool for graduate civil engineers. Once they complete their degree, then hopefully we have positions for them, and most times we do. We bring them on board as full-fledged employees, but the problem that we have is once we train them, make that investment, they stay with us for about 3 to 4 years, and private industry take them because they can offer them a better salary.
That's an
Are you
internship,
talking
right?
sabbatical for the professors, for the research?
Yeah.
I'll share this with you. I did a survey a few years back and asked that very question of any other states, and the only response that came close was once about 20 years ago, ... that I got. So of the respondents, there was not. And I think I got 25 or 30 responses. So yeah, there was nothing out there in those rooms that I was aware of.
So do you think that would be something useful to both parties? You know, for faculty to understand the DOT side and for the DOTs to take advantage of knowledge from the faculty?
I don't know if we can pay your salary.
We should move to another question.
Well, could that be flipped and go the other way? So the DOT interested in sending somebody to the university for to sort of engage in the research project? Say, could your champion maybe come to work and actually be the university's senator? You really see how it all works.
I can give you an example. I kind of tried that in our home office. I took somebody out of materials and kind of put them in research full time to help with pavement design, to implement the new pavement design guide. But things were changing back in their office, and so much so that it didn't work. I have to have them like half-time. You can't go full-time because otherwise there are things, we don't like change, but things do change. And so that would be my only concern.
I meant at the university, not in your research group, but actually have them at the university.
You mean take somebody out of the DOT and put them in the university, right? But when they go back, their workplace is going to change so much that they're going to have a learning curve to get caught back up. So if you did like a half-time, that actually may work better. But just my personal experience, I got burned.
One last question because time is running. Yes, sir.
I have a question, from the address, North Carolina. I think your way of funding research projects a bit different from the others. You tie it back to the individual project, like actual construction project. Can you explain that, how usually it works? It's not like it's just a topic, but it's just tied to a project, so.
Right, are you talking about in the permitting phase?
Yeah.
Okay, sure, our research, we have research funds available, just like everybody else, but we also use PE, preliminary engineering funds on our big construction projects to fund our research. If that research is tied to that particular project, and we do that quite often. There's quite a bit of substantial money in those PE funds, and they're set aside for research if it's needed. And so, yeah, that is a common practice for us.
And is it typically go to the consulting firms, or is it going to university?
Oh, it goes to university.
It goes to university. Can you give us examples of like those projects tied back to the PE funds?
Sediment and erosion control for construction projects. I don't want to get into too much details, but the EPA hasn't set a limit for how much erosion control is needed on a construction project. They have it for farming, but they don't have it for construction projects. So we have researchers come in and do research on sediment and erosion control on a construction project. And our PE funds can come in and pay for that. We have a project in the mountains of North Carolina where we have an endangered bat, the Virginia big-eared bat. And even though we're looking at widening the highway up in the mountains, the federal guys, the wildlife management guys, want us to look at this bat and look at roosting and see where they're flying around up there in the mountains. And we use PE funds for that. So yeah, they're available.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I will go to the next question, and we'll start with Bill this time. Other end change. And I guess I'll use my here being the moderator. I'll just decided to jump to the fourth question. It's very important, and I don't want to lose that. This question is, what does the DOT see as future emerging areas of research or high priority areas of work that they are looking for universities to provide? From that angle is really what's you can see is coming up or existing at this time. What's really most important needs and topics or areas of research?
We had and I'm going to fall back on our 2012 research needs workshop that I mentioned earlier, because there's actually 9 areas that were identified, and then within each of those areas were certain topics. Economic development, environmental issues and transportation, intermodal transportation, freight and people, maintenance and materials, professional development, roadways, right-of-way, hydraulics, hydrology, structures and geotechnical, traffic safety and ITS, construction and materials. You can go to our website and access this, the summary from this research needs workshop, and go through and look at the different subtitles that fall under each of those. One of the big things that we're currently doing now in the state, we spent a lot of money on research-wise, is implementing the new AstroWare Pavement ME design. I mean, that just has been, it consumes a lot of money. No, I say relative, it's relative, everything's relative, but you've got materials characterization, traffic has to be characterized differently than the earlier design guides, climate, there's all these different facets that really, we didn't consider climate too much in the past, but it's at the forefront now. So there's lots of different facets for looking at the research.
John?
I'm going to reiterate a little bit what Keith Golden said this morning from the Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Transportation, and that is transportation asset management. What's the best return on our dollar? With shrinking funds in DOT, we need to look at how we can work better with fewer funds. Other areas are the MAP 21. You talked about that. Policy research can be a big area also, aside from the hard research. research to make our policy decisions better or more understandable. And then again, the environmental, I mean, that's an emerging issue. Like 20 years ago, we didn't care about it. It's huge right now. It's understudied, and it will continue to grow.
Well, looking at a lot of the presentations today, it seems like the collaborations are going pretty well because a lot of these hot topics are underway and in study. So I'd say we've got a pretty good job going here. Sustainability, I mean, I can give you some stock answers, so of which we've already heard, freight, big data, sustainability of various types, right? We're looking at what happens when you don't have positives or flash or whatever. And then one that's got a very interesting history for us is the autonomous vehicle. We tried to put forward a cooperative research study, policy study, 4 or 5 years ago, and finished dead last. And we put it in once more, and it didn't fare a whole lot better. Then we tried to do a pool fund study, and that just sort of fell apart. And this very year, scores right now deciding, I don't think we'll decide favorably, but based on initial votes, on putting $1 million a year into autonomous vehicles. That issue is driven, really, I think, it would appear that it's driven by industry, because we had connected vehicle going along, and autonomous vehicle was just this other thing. Well, it's an area that's ripe for, I think, certainly for the policy study, and I know that we're looking into those things. Our planning folks and our traffic ops folks are at the helm of that. So that's certainly an area I think that's going to continue to be studied.
Accelerated construction methods to rehab our current infrastructure. Get in, get out, stay out. That's what we're hearing. And aging drivers, our driving populace is getting older. Delineation, looking at that. ADA requirements. And as this term is used a lot, going green. Resign.
All right. Well, the commissioner mentioned design build this morning and risk management. We actually have research projects going on in both of those areas right now, but I still see that as something that's going to be continuous need and evolve more so. Commissioner also recently told me that the public's now asking him, what have you done lately to provide for longer pavement life? What are you doing? And what I really see that we haven't tapped yet is nanotechnology. Is really changing the materials that we use. At the nanoscale, I know that sounds, hearing that come from a DOT person, you're probably going, what? But the General Accountability Office just put out a report last month that says that nanotechnology is going to be like the digital revolution. It's the next digital revolution. And so if we can harvest that into our pavements, into our bridges, we're going to help with that asset management in the long-term asset life.
You've got a big list of all sorts of interests and excitement. There is. If you're looking for one project or one focus, I think you got it. But you have a broad spectrum, which is really good, because then it covers a lot of expertise, a lot of background. I noticed sustainability, going green, or new thing emerging, becoming now important, ADA requirements and stuff like that. Very cool. Questions from the floor? Yes.
Yeah, a comment, a question. Comment, Darryll, you mentioned about the autonomous vehicles, and it's interesting. We do a review of all the MPO long-range plans around the state at our center. And when they just finished them, the big question was, has a single MPO put in anything about autonomous vehicles and the impact on long-range transportation plans? And the answer was no. So I'm glad that the department is bumping up the significance of that issue. My question, I can't remember who mentioned it, when you were suggesting how can universities do better working with the DOTs, is to understand how the DOTs work. And, I mean, clearly, you folks represent big agencies that have a big mission and crossing all kinds of disciplines, and you do a professional job that's just admirable. And I think we'd like to know more. And I'm wondering, what is the best way to learn more about how you operate, so that we, in turn, can be more helpful to you in accomplishing your mission?
How do we go about finding out more about how you operate?
I would say what we do, 10-hour construction conferences, maintenance conferences, and if you attend those conferences, then FHWA is there, and you get a good feel for the good, the bad, the ugly, things that we're doing well, things that we're not doing so well, more or less, things that are problematic, and you also get a good understanding of how we operate together.
One mechanism,
Well, yeah, just based kind of on Georgene, you said the nanotechnology, which is fantastic, right? But that enters a different kind of research, right, in a way. Because we've heard a lot about it has to be implementable, what's the cost benefit, what's all this. And now you're crossing into the type of research that has a high probability of failure. Right? How do we manage that with our DOT? So, if we get into some of these projects which just have a good chance of not working, if they work, you hit a home run. But there's a good chance this thing is going to just, right? That's where I put my NSF ideas, right? How do I do that with the DOT but not get slammed when it does not work? Is it solvable?
But, well, the only thing I could think of was bite that elephant off a little piece at a time. Don't try to build the whole elephant. Try something smaller. Using some of the technology.
But it's very tough. It may not be implementable when you're done. I mean, that's where that kind of research can go. You build foundations that don't fly.
Well, and you're looking, I was asked to look at emerging areas, so it may not, we're not going to do all of our research on nanotechnology next year. We're not going to put all of our $6 million into that. But maybe there is a possibility of a small project. Get it started. But if every state does one small project, then maybe we'll have something going. And there is NSF money going into it. And there is other money going into it for those big pieces. But bite off a little piece.
Yeah, my question has to do with following up what you said. There's something called NCHRP idea, which is for risk projects, but I was wondering how you can relate those projects to DOT projects in different states. Because NCHRP ideas are mostly done by companies, and they're high risk, high reward, but usually it's not being implemented statewide on local venues.
The idea, for anyone who doesn't know the acronyms, idea is deserving exploratory analysis. And it's, I believe it's capped at, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere, $100,000. It's 150. And so, yeah, there's a website you go out to, and you can apply. There's a whole process. Have you gone to the website and actually delved into the program?
Yeah, I've seen it. Actually, we applied before. What I'm saying is, they do high risk, high rewards. I think they fund the first part. Then, if it's good, then you can give them more money to implement it. What I'm saying is that to actually do those kind of research at state level, there should be a link between results of NCHP RFP, at least the phase 1, and maybe different states, so they can take it up and implement it.
Yeah, I think you're saying, how do you implement those idea projects back to the states?
And we've actually had research that followed up into idea.
Oh, okay.
So.
And I've had people come in with some crazy idea that was really, really risky, and I would direct them to NCHRP idea, because that was what it was designed for. It would be good to go through idea first, and then come to those. So I guess it's kind of, the researcher needs to help with the implementation and provide that to the states.
Excellent. We have one more question, and we have only 5 minutes. Mike, right?
principal question, I guess, here is how universities can help state DOT. But I think there's another question of what state DOTs can do to help universities help state DOT. And specifically, as a lot of the research issues that we face very serious data challenges about the availability of data from state DOTs in order to be able to do the research to help DOT solve the problem. I was just curious if any of your states had some sort of strategic data plan of collecting and accumulating data on a systematic basis that you think may be necessary to do research in the future. Because we can do a lot of things, but we can't ever turn back the clock, okay, to what it was 5 years ago. So I'm just curious as to any states have thought about implementing some type of data plan.
HPMS. That's our data plan. Highway performance is what is federally required. So, because of funding, that's where we get stuck.
We share data often. In fact, I've got a meeting when I go back. There's a project that was brought up and found out that we were actually collecting data for one of the tasks in our RCI inventory. So yeah, we do make the data available. The trick is knowing in advance what you might need and is it going to be collected in that way. And that's one of the challenges that we've got with doing performance analysis on research. I mean, that's one of the tricks. And sitting on 2063, which is that research performance measurement NCHRP study, the toolbox that was designed to help state DOTs calculate the benefits of research. And it seemed like there were a lot of folks going to that table thinking there was a magic bullet. And the bottom line was there's not. Even when you use a tool, you're going to have to do the tough legwork to have the information. So when I alluded a little bit earlier saying, you know, I tell my performance coordinator, when you go to a kickoff meeting, if we haven't caught it already, when you go to a kickoff meeting, you see an opportunity to collect data that we need to do the analysis. Let's talk about it. Let's find a way if we can build it in. And I want there to be a gradual shift in thinking about pre and post and building that kind of meta activity into the research itself so that it can be used and leveraged later to help assess what we've done.
If I could, just an example though, might very well be, is there any policy for systematically archiving, for example, your video data, one day a year or one day a quarter, that 5 years from now someone could actually compare the video records from a known position?
You're talking like ITS?
Well,
I think we have a policy to not do that. So we don't have to retrieve it for the lawyers.
Yeah.
I mean, our policy is not to keep it. And the lawyers drive a lot of data decisions.
No, I'm aware of that. I'm saying that in terms of its ability for universities to help, very often the decisions to exclude data or to not systematically archive various forms of data have impacts upon the ability of researchers to provide the type of answers that DOT presumably want the answer to. And so it's bad when our policy to find data is the data you've forgotten to throw away is available. And I don't mean that negatively, but there are cases where, on a random day, on the 4th of, on some obscure day every year, you just simply archive the downtown connector video data. Provides a potential data source that may be of value later on, but we don't really know.
We're guilty of that. Sometimes, I'll go ahead and confess something. Sometimes we don't provide you research in a timely manner, and we could do a better job. But what I would say, do if you would, include that in your proposal and in your kickoff meeting, reemphasize it, And another thing while we're on that subject, if you're gonna need DOT forces in your research, make sure you put that in your proposal, and halfway through the research, don't surprise us.
There's a cost to archive that data, so that's, I
A
think
good
that's what he's
research
saying.
project, with the data. Well, we're up, but I think we maybe can take 2 extra minutes or so to wrap up the last question. And the last question, maybe not everybody need to respond unless you have something, you need to say. The last question really, and I think it's very important, is about what is new or emerging or different in state DOT operations that would impact universities? And what do you suggest they should do? What's really different in your states, or new policies or new operation tools or anything like that?
I could perhaps start on that. One thing that the states, we're starting to have some accountability issues where performance measures coming out that we have to show some bang for the buck. In other words, our program is actually producing something of value. Okay, and that's something that's kind of been evolving. And so what we're doing in new research proposals is we're asking the PIs, the consultants, to basically plan with the end in mind. What is our objective of the research? And start thinking when we're developing the research plan, what are we wanting to implement? What are we wanting to try to do? And start building in from the get-go, how are we going to get there? Because we are trying to learn ways of how we can quantify the benefits of our research so that then we can share that with the FHWA or whoever else may be wanting to hold us accountable. The other thing is money's getting scarce, as everybody knows, and money's drying up, and so you really have to, so from congressional, the rest of these folks can probably speak more to that than myself, but at the highest levels, people are looking at where are the dollars being spent, and are they being spent wisely, and can you show us some benefit? You heard the commissioner this morning, talking to Georgene, he's always saying to her, well, what's the return on investment? Years ago, we were not pushed in that, we were not pushed in past, but it's coming, and so that's why now, build it in from the beginning. When you build a study, develop a study, how are you going to quantify the benefits of that research? You don't have the results of the research at the get-go. Obviously, you have to do the research. But if you start thinking about how you're going to use it and implement it, you're setting yourself up for success to achieve the goal of how can I get return on investment.
See John, maybe comments? Darryll, Jeff?
Ditto.
Eugene?
We're decentralizing as a DOT, and that's going to bring on some good things and some challenges, and our institutions will have to come look at us in a different facet. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. We don't know. We're doing a prototype right now. We're testing the region, and in about a year, if that works, then we're going to be in regions instead of districts. So that's something that we're not afraid of it, but we have some.
Any last question? We can entertain maybe one question or two. Max? On the floor.
The Commissioner this morning spoke about the lack of revenue. We've touched on it a number of times. And my first thought is, well, those sort of questions maybe are better on a national scale because it's a national issue. But then again, I think, well, maybe the states are different from each other in different ways. And I see you all together in 5 states, and I wonder, is there any kind of a cool, fun project that you folks would like to see done to identify different means of generating revenue and the analysis that goes along with that for the Southeastern states and the United States?
Sure, right up north.
Our director has, we look at ways of generating revenue, and we looked at possibly tolling our interstates. But we found out, from FHWA, we got to get special permission to do
fund other research engineers in the Southeast. And we do pool fund projects through that.
There actually is a synthesis study that we just started dealing with alternative funding mechanisms for transportation that just started within the last month or so. And it's not new research, but it's a synthesis of research that's already been done in the alternative funding mechanism category. And I have to know about that because we're doing it. But that synthesis should be completed in the next, 9 months or so.
And FIU did a study for us last year.
Well, that has been a very productive session, and of course our panel is available after this meeting, so you're welcome to come and talk to them and ask more questions. We appreciate it.